6 o'clock Eastern Time here on this Friday, getaway day for the Memorial Day weekend. I'm Joe Cioffi here with Joe Rayo.
Yes, sir.
It's another special edition of the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Back-to-back days. We are, of course, watching Subtropical Storm Alberto, which was upgraded this morning from the Hurricane Center. And we talked about this yesterday, Joe, that the Hurricane Center did have a bit of a dilemma on their hands going into the holiday weekend, but it does look from the satellite presentation, and then the Air Force reconnaissance aircraft was in there this afternoon, and it found a fairly ragged system, but it did find a broad closed circulation. And by the way, I'm going to bring this up full. It really, that low-level circulation shows up very, very well here. Take a look at this. Here's a tight view. It's right there off the Yucatan Peninsula. A little bit of a well-defined center, but it's got a ragged look to it, no doubt.
And all of the convection, all of the major action with this system is on the eastern quadrant, and I'm sure that as time wears on, this thing may continue to strengthen enough so that it will go from subtropical to just plain tropical characteristics, and that will be a threat, again, to folks down in the south. I want to just say, Joe, here and now, people up here in the tri-state area who've been hearing about this system.
And we're talking basically eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, including New York City, Philadelphia, Hudson Valley, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut. Go ahead.
We don't want to give them the impression, because I'm sure a lot of people who are tuning into the forecasts are hearing about unsettled and possibly not great conditions for part, if not a good chunk of this upcoming weekend for us, and they're probably automatically saying, "Oh, I think it's that hurricane, that tropical cyclone down
it's
south."
Totally not. And for us, it's got nothing to do with it.
It has absolutely nothing to do with it at all. In fact, what is going to do us in is something completely different, not from the Gulf of Mexico, but from our friends up in Canada, sending us a weather front, a backdoor weather front, which is going to come on in here tomorrow night and kind of settle in our vicinity for Sunday and part of Monday. And that's the thing that's going to do us in. It has nothing to do with Alberto. For this upcoming weekend.
We're going to bring up the warnings, watches that are up as we. Let me just make sure this is the most recent one, and we'll give it an update. So one of the things, of course, we've been talking about the fact that rain is going to be a big deal here. Flood watch is up for Central and South Florida. Also, we have flood watches up for the Alabama coast into southeastern Louisiana, and we have tropical storm watches up from northwestern Florida. It's hard to see, but it's that light yellow color. Northwestern Florida, westward to Mobile, Biloxi, into southeastern Louisiana, and including New Orleans. So nothing of consequence from the standpoint of wind is going to be happening at the now and maybe for a good chunk of Saturday, but rain is going on. I've been watching, Joe, on the radar. It's been pretty loaded in Central and South Florida today with some very heavy rains, and that's part of that ragged look with everything on the east side.
Yeah, my best man at my wedding all those years ago, Sam Storch, moved about actually more than 5, about almost 10 years ago, from Long Island to Boynton Beach, Florida, and he has been continuously complaining about the weather down there, and especially during the summertime with the humidity and the periods of rain. He says, we had a little bit of drizzle today. We had only about an inch or two.
Exactly.
And this is probably going to drop a pretty good bucket of rainfall on him. It seems to me like right now the radar, he's just out of it, but obviously with Alberta moving northward and bringing all that, spiraling that tropical moisture in, folks in the Sunshine State are going to get their first taste of those heavy-duty tropical rains, I'm sure.
Seeing somebody here, let's see, Mike Petrovich, currently in Southwest Florida, getting locally 2 inches of rain just for today, and they've had heavy rains since last week. So the flooding potential is high, and you can see there's also some heavy showers and thunderstorms all around Mississippi, southeast Louisiana, through Alabama and Georgia. So when the rains get in there from the tropical storm, on top of all of this, it's going to be certainly flooding is going to be an issue.
I think now that we're in this type of situation for the people in Florida, I think about let's say a couple who've been married for many, many years, they're in their 60s or maybe their 70s, and they're looking out the window during February or January, and they're looking at the snow coming down, and finally the wife says to the husband, I think it's time, dear. I think it's time we move to that paradise, wonderful Florida. We finally relocate, and they both agree, and they go down to Florida, and they never ever consider what the scenario can be as early as now, in May or into June.
Oh, yeah.
It's a situation like this. And now I'm picturing that same couple. They were looking out their window at the snow. Now they're looking out their window at the heavy-duty torrential rains and
Right.
saying, why did we come down here? What the heck is this all about? It's it's a trade-off, I guess, one for the other.
I want to show everybody, at least from the standpoint of the NAM model, the rainfall out through 84 hours, which would take us into Monday night. And, depending on, track is going to mean everything. This is going to be really tough to forecast. Somebody's going to wind up, you've got this bubble of 6-inch plus rains being shown for southeastern Louisiana and southern Mississippi. Actually, that's even higher than 6. That's like 6 to 10 inches of rain.
Right.
And you've got some patchy areas of 3-4 inches up and down Florida. But this is one of those situations, I think, Joe, that you really aren't going to know how exactly the rain shield is going to set up and who's going to get the heavy rains. And every run kind of emphasizes something different. The reason why the NAM has this area where it does, the max area is... this is where it wants to take the center of Alberto as a strong tropical storm, or maybe even a minimal hurricane. I wouldn't rule it out. It takes it into southeast Louisiana. So this would be basically along and just to the west of the forecast track that the hurricane, that the NAM has. The Hurricane Center, I believe, on their forecast, has a track a little bit further to the east.
Yeah.
So, it's going to be hard to say who gets the heavy rain, but I think I don't think you would disagree. I'm going to draw this area inside here in orange, okay? You got to think that, this is certainly an area that some places have the potential for, let's say 5 inches plus rainfall.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't think that that's an unreasonable thing to say.
See, this is like a broad brush. When you take a look at all the computer models, and you can't say with any certainty where a renegade heavy cell of precipitation with the potential of dropping like 2 or 3 inches in only a matter of an hour or two is going to pop up, and that's going to you see this in the aftermath of tropical systems that pass on by. You see like 3.2 inches, 4.2, and all of a sudden you see like one place out there 8.7.
Right.
And it not only happens down there, it's happened up here too. I mean, you take a look at some of those scenarios we've had in recent years. Parts of Long Island, for example, getting 8 or 9 inches of rain in just one day, whereas up in the Hudson Valley we barely have been able to squeeze out an inch or two. So it does happen, and in this type of a situation, when you have that heavy-duty amount of when the atmosphere is so heavily filled with moisture, the dew points are like flying up past 70.
Oh yeah,
you get that.
I just brought up the surface map from the NAM. This is for Sunday afternoon, this is 2 p.m. Sunday afternoon. It has a fairly well-developed system there. It shows a pressure of about 990. So I mean, that could certainly would say a moderate to strong tropical storm, maybe top winds of 60, 65 miles an hour,
right.
Offshore. But notice the heavier rain that the NAM shows over Florida on Sunday, from the Keys all the way up into southern Georgia. But there really isn't too much happening on the Panhandle and back at southeast Louisiana. One of the things that happens in instances like this, you get some subsidence as the hurricane approaches north of it.
Right.
So some areas up to the north of the tropical storm may wind up having certainly a decent start to Sunday until weather conditions deteriorate. Everything kind of tightens up.
Right.
So you get all the convection, the strong convection. The bands are close to the circulation center, but you have dry air that's sinking on the periphery. So don't be too fooled if you wind up with a long stretch of dry weather in parts of the Gulf states here, for later Saturday into Sunday until this thing can lift northward.
Yeah, somebody is obviously going to say something like, well, they said it was going to be so bad, but look how nice it is out there, George.
Right.
But the other thing is that if you're near or along the path when it comes inland, of course, the going overland, that's going to knock the wind out of it, whatever wind it does manage to gather over the next 24 to 36 hours. But something called frictional drag, all of that tropical moisture is going to end up being literally squeezed out, and as the system drags across the land, that's where you're going to find the really heavy duty activity in terms of rainfall.
Once again, going to bring up the upper air, and we'll take a look at the dilemma for Sunday afternoon. And we've been discussing this. Every run kind of changes it a little bit, and you wonder if, there we go, so that everybody can see, and let me just make sure it's front and center on the camera, which it is. Okay, so this is how it looks up at 18,000 feet Sunday afternoon. Well, what do we got? We got a big ridge off the east coast, and you can see it right here. Almost looks like the head of one of the Bugs Bunny, the evil professor.
Oh,
remember?
Right, in the haunted house.
Right. Okay, so
Rudolph.
Exactly. All right, so here's your upper high. Here's your upper high.
It's sad to say that only people of a certain age and time, the kids of today, wouldn't understand what we're talking about. But,
exactly. Here's the other upper high in Mexico that actually is kind of built up rather strongly up in the Central Plains. You've got this trough in the middle, and by the way, the trough right now that's down there, the upper trough, is responsible for the ragged look that we have, but the upper air conditions are going to improve as this moves into the Gulf of Mexico, and the wind shear conditions are going to relax a bit, so conditions are definitely going to be more favorable for this thing to develop a bit. But here's your reflection of the upper air system and Alberto. I'm usually pretty good at trying to draw that tropical storm symbol, but again, we've got this thing trapped where it is between the two ridges, and you still have no sign, at least through Sunday afternoon, that northern jet still not getting far enough south to give it a kick in one direction or another.
Right.
Very frustrating pattern, and I think, Joe, this could still wind up surprising, maybe stalling out for a while before while it gets into the Gulf Coast. So we're going to have to certainly watch it very closely.
And notice that slight little ridging in the Gulf of Maine, which is indicative of
right here
of the high that is building down from eastern Canada.
This is what Joe's referring to here, that little ridge.
Right there, that little ridge there.
Right.
And there is going to be a pretty good, small but compact and impressive high pressure zone building down across eastern Canada and through the Maritimes, and that is the thing that's going to push that backdoor weather front through our area come tomorrow night and Sunday.
And we get the onshore flow from that.
Right. And unfortunately, and this is more, you see this more often, I think, in the fall as opposed to the springtime. Oh, you'll see it in the springtime too, where the high builds offshore off of, let's say, Nova Scotia, and it just sits there. Mm-hmm. And with that, plus again that ridge of high pressure that's down off the southeast coast, the front comes through, and that there's no way to push it on out, at least initially, and that's going to be the problem for Sunday and part of Monday. We're going to be stuck on the wrong side of the fence, or the wrong side of the front, so to speak, and we could very well see. I think tomorrow night, for example, tonight, at least in the Hudson Valley, and I'm sure for a lot of other places too, it's an abnormally or atypically mild late May night.
Right.
60s to around 70. Now tomorrow night, coming off of the day tomorrow, with 80s to near 90 in some places, it's going to be another unusually mild night. And in fact, it's not out of the question that when you wake up on Sunday morning, the temperatures in some locations will be around 65 to 70, but then as that front, that backdoor front, eases down past us and goes to our south, and we get into that easterly airflow, we start at 65, let's say, on Sunday morning, and then with each passing hour it goes down another degree or so that by mid or late day on Sunday, it could very well be in the 50s, along with a raw mist or drizzle or light rain, not the kind of weather pattern you'd want to see in the middle of your Memorial Day holiday weekend,
right.
Unfortunately.
All right, so here's the new GFS We'll see what it decides to do on what adventure it takes us on. It initially with Alberto wants to kind of take it northeast and north. Actually has it a little closer to the Florida coast than some of the prior runs. And then you start to see that kind of bend back almost to the west, kind of doing a looping motion here, but taking a while. I mean, this is now Monday afternoon. It's still not on shore as a fairly wrapped up moderate to strong tropical storm. The moisture doesn't get much further north than the Carolinas, and you would expect that given the upper air that we described before.
Right.
And then it moves inland, and it just takes, at this point now, we're into later Tuesday, the much of the central and east Gulf states and Florida still dealing with downpours, but we are going to be in decent shape into Wednesday. But, you start to wonder now if some of that moisture later next week moves up the East Coast, which is what the models are hinting at, although it doesn't seem to be doing it very efficiently.
Right.
But eventually, I think, Joe, you might see some of that rain get up here. It may just take, maybe not be till the latter part of next week.
It may take the better part of next week before it finally gets here. It right now, at least from what I could see, Friday of next week looks to be wet, and we may begin to see the cloud cover from that moisture from the south arrive here on Thursday. But that still means just to jab it into your heart when you're heading back to work at school on Tuesday.
Right.
Tuesday and Wednesday look like two beautifully sunny days, and you say to yourself, why couldn't it be this way, Sunday or even Monday?
Here's the upper air. I'm starting with present time. The weakness that you see down, that's that trough that extends down into the Gulf of Mexico, and that gradually strengthens a bit at the 18,000 foot level going through the weekend. You can see the two ridges on either side, the northwest flow up from the Great Lakes into southeastern New England. But as we go into next week, slowly but surely, we start to see a bit of a breakdown in all of this. You eventually start to bring that jet a little bit further to the south, so that at least things do start to get moving after about Monday or early Tuesday.
Right.
You don't want this sitting down across the southern states all week long next week. So hopefully, we can get things moving. But the new GFS does have a different look in the pattern toward the end of next week.
And I've used the analogy here of like an atmospheric crowbar prying out the stuck weather system or the cold air, the dense cold air. And that's, in essence, what's going to happen, I think, early next week. Is we're finally just going to see everything start moving again because we're, just pry everything out.
The European, by the way, the European model, was pretty much had the same idea overall. I'm going to bring up the upper air with the surface together and just take a look at what it did today. But you'll start to see that system emerge into the Gulf of Mexico. This is on Saturday morning, and then moving northward. We're now into Monday morning, and it's still off the southeast coast of Louisiana, and then it kind of jumps northward from there, taking it inland near Mobile. So the Europeans actually come a little bit further to the east over the last couple of days, and it's not that far from where the other models are. They're all relatively close together. They all have basically the same idea. So I think it's just a matter for the folks that are watching from the Gulf Coast, trying to figure out and pinpointing where the center is going to come in. But being that the bigger deal at the moment still remains rain, as we said. So it's probably going to be along and east of the track that you'll see the heaviest rain. That's the satellite signature at the moment, and I think that would make the most sense.
Yeah.
Later in the week, or into Thursday, so at this point, the European would certainly argue that maybe some of that rain moves up. There's a low, probably reflecting some kind of upper trough that's in western Ohio. It'll probably pick up some of that tropical moisture and bring it up here for the end of the week before it moves out. Like you said, maybe later Friday or even by next Saturday. We still got some kind of weather system hanging around here in the eastern part of the United States.
A very sluggish, overall pattern for the next 6 or 8 days, it would appear right now.
All right, so let's bring this down here. Just really quick, Joe, let's just look at the severe weather that's going on tonight from the Storm Prediction Center. because we do have two areas of risk of, we've got two severe thunderstorm watches up this evening. If you're watching, this is as of 20 minutes after 6 Eastern time. So if you're watching this later this evening, be sure to check with your local National Weather Service office regarding what is going on at the moment. You're watching it. Also, by the way, if you are watching for areas that are dealing with, any kind of implications with regards to Alberto, you have questions regarding what you might need to do, direct those to your local National Weather Service office, weather.gov, or the National Hurricane Center, nhc.noaa.org. So we got two severe thunderstorm watches, a slight risk up in parts of Wisconsin and southeastern Minnesota, another area in western Oklahoma, and you can see the broken area of thunderstorms across all of the Gulf states. Some places getting powdered with some heavy rains, and they got more to go.
I find it interesting that we find ourselves kind of in an oasis
of no storm zone.
But yet up in northern and central Maine,
yes,
they have.
You have a marginal risk up in northern Maine.
Yeah.
Also, not to leave out the folks out west, dry in the Rockies, but in the northern Rockies, there's an area of marginal risk that extends into western Oregon and looks like northernmost Nevada. But at least from the standpoint of severe weather this weekend, I'm thinking at least for the eastern part of the United States, it's going to be minimal. I don't think we're going to have to worry about severe weather here tomorrow.
No, I think it'll just be regular, as if there are thunderstorms. You hear the crack of thunder or see flashes of lightning, but not the kind of thunderstorms that we have seen in the last week or two here, with the potential of bringing down power lines and trees. But again, don't be surprised if you are awakened tomorrow night by some thunder activity, as was the case even a couple of nights ago. And that again will be the backdoor weather front coming on down. Once the front establishes itself over us and then passes to our south, the air is going to become much too cool to support any thundery weather. It'll just be that steady, dribbly, drabbly, light rain or drizzle type condition. But when the front initially comes in tomorrow night, again, it could come in with a bang with some of that convective activity.
That slight risk of severe weather up in Minnesota. Nitrovert says he's in Winona, Minnesota, and he's seeing some bad thunderstorms. Will there be an orographic effect in the Appalachians enhancing the rain, asks Reaver 501. What do you think?
Well, you mean from the
I'm thinking he means from the tropical system.
Oh, from the tropical system.
Yeah.
I think my mind is like working like an easterly flow interacting with the Appalachians up here. Well, that we always find that the hilly terrain have a bit more in terms of precipitation. So it's quite possible, I guess, that if it works its way up from the south and interacts with some of the Appalachian Mountain, maybe down in the Tennessee area or even northern Georgia or western sections of South Carolina, you may see some localized heavy bursts of rainfall.
Reaver, the air show for Sunday. I'm thinking we're talking on and on. If you're talking about
Sunday.
What's that? Is it Sunday or tomorrow?
Is it Sunday or I don't know. If it's
either way, I think the nature of the on and off showers would probably, to me, think that they would be able to go forward with it. I'm not too overly pessimistic, nor am I too optimistic. I just don't think it's going to be a washout.
Well, now the question is not so much in terms of precipitation, but how about fog? That is another question. Right now, I would probably lean to it being a go, but I'm not I'm not the one that makes that decision. Obviously, one of our reporters actually went into the aircraft, one of the Blue Angels aircraft, and during their practice runs, and they're spinning her around.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that. I saw that. I'm not doing it.
I'm not doing that either.
Right.
I give her a medal for bravery.
Thank you for the kind words, Israel and Reaver. By the way, Joe is normally an enthusiastic person, so I wouldn't interpret his when he was talking about the weather not being so nice around here as something in terms of glee.
No.
We want a nice holiday weekend. Believe me, we would like to have things nice and quiet and calm, but they seldom are in the world of weather.
In fact, on Virus One, I just a few minutes ago, I equated. In fact, to give you an idea of what I thought the 3-day holiday weekend was going to be like, I used the title from a spaghetti western from 1966, which some of you may remember and may even have the whistling in the back of your mind: The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
I'm thinking, by the way, I'm trying to remember now. Eli Wallach was in that movie, right?
Right.
Yul Brynner.
I don't know if Yul Brynner. I'm not really.
This is what happens sometimes when we go out on a tangent.
I think Paul Newman was in that movie.
All right. Well, you know what? This is easy to.
Now we're going to go to the good, bad. All right. Basically, the good day.
You explain and I'll get it.
The good day. The good is going to come tomorrow. A beach day, sunshine, late day clouds. It's going to be a rather humid day, no question about that. But right now, I think it's going to stay dry right on through the. Well, there you go. The whole slew of people here.
Exactly.
Clint Eastwood, Eli Wallach.
Hold on. Eli Wallach, Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef, Aldo Guthrie, Luigi Pistilli, Rado Rassimov.
Maybe that's why it's a spaghetti western.
Yeah, that's it. Everybody else is,
just
secondary.
But I think the music is more famous than the actual movie.
Right, the song. All right, so go ahead. Finish that.
The good is tomorrow. The bad is Memorial Day, Monday. Not bad from the standpoint of being a holiday, and of course we all want the flags out on Monday to honor all of our veterans who are going to be honored on Monday for the holiday. But bad in the sense that it starts off rather wet and rainy. We may see some pokes of sun. Hopefully the sun does put in at least a cameo appearance in the afternoon to try to salvage the second half of the day on Monday. And the ugly is going to definitely be Sunday, I think, with clouds, mist, drizzle, light rain, and fog, which I hope does not have any. If the air show is on Sunday, I hope that does not have a play in postponing or canceling the air show.
Martin Bienvenu for Lafayette. Yeah, I think you're kind of like on the westernmost part of the envelope, and if we see this thing, drift a little bit further to the east, that may actually lessen the impact for you. But a lot of this is still in the we're still in like kind of a speculative phase here as far as what's going to happen late in the period. And I think the reason is because of the structure of the upper air creating a lot of uncertainty with relatively weak steering and the impact of the upper low. I wouldn't completely rule out this suddenly winds up jumping in either direction, a little further west or a little bit further east than forecast. I'm just trying to make sure any chance of any thunderstorms south of New York City by your area, or better chance north. For tomorrow, Israel, I don't know. It depends on what model you use. If you look at the NAM, some of the models want to have a couple of stray cells in central and south Jersey tomorrow evening. A couple of others have them scattered around to the north. I think the best way to approach that from the standpoint of the forecast, Joe, and I don't think you disagree, I put it in for the whole area. And
right.
Whoever gets it, and whoever doesn't, doesn't.
Right. I think the best chance of getting, I won't say severe, but maybe a bit heavier activity or more widespread activity would be places to the north and east of the New York City metropolitan area, because the thunderstorms, again, are coming in from the north and east with that front. And right about sundown, the time when the diurnal convection will be at its peak is probably going to be over Connecticut and maybe the upstate part of New York, let's say up toward Kingston or Albany. And as we move through the night, they will continue to progress toward the tri-state area, but also as the night progresses, they should weaken a little bit.
And again, when Joe says tri-state area, he's talking New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, exactly, because there are a lot of tri-state areas around the country, and we have a very varied audience here from a lot of places. Ethan Kerr saying it's crazy that we've had 7 preseason tropical storms since 2012. That's correct. This is the, I'm sorry, it's the third. I don't think we've had 7 preseason tropical storms since 2012. We've had 3 in the last 7 years.
There's one way we could check on this after the show is that Unisys has a website, unisys.com, and if you go to Unisys /hurricanes, they'll show you the track of every single hurricane going back to the mid-1850s, believe it or not. And so you could see, we could count them, all the, not just the hurricanes, but tropical storms and subtropical systems as well.
Right. All right, folks, we're going to call it we're going to call an end to this now. Thanks for being here tonight. And it's a Friday night ahead of a holiday weekend, so we would strongly urge you to have a very safe weekend. And of course, Monday week is Memorial Day, and we commemorate those that have given up their lives for our country. So please remember that as you work, enjoy yourself through this weekend. That it came at a price, and we need to honor those people.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's not just barbecues, picnics on the beach. It is indeed people who we say they gave their lives. I don't think they wanted to give it, obviously.
Right.
But they
sacrificed
had to go.
Their lives.
They had to go, and it's a tough holiday to
it is
to take, but
it's a solemn day.
But it is absolutely.
And we need to remember that.
Fly the flag on Monday.
That's correct. All right, so folks, here's the plan for the weekend. I'm going to be around. I don't know when I will be live streaming, but I will, I'm sure, tomorrow and again on Sunday, especially as Alberto becomes a bigger issue for the Gulf Coast. Joe and I will be back at 9:15 tonight Eastern Time on Facebook, meteorologist Joe Cioffi, or on Joe Rayo Weather for the Joe and Joe Weather Show. We'll redo this again with some fresh stuff at 9:15, so you can tune in there.
And we'll be here on Monday.
And we'll be here. Both of us will be here on Monday for Memorial Day.
Absolutely.
All right, folks. Have a great night and a great weekend. If we don't see you, otherwise, we'll maybe see you at 9:15.
See you later.